The Whispering Library. In a quiet, forgotten town surrounded by misty hills and ancient forests, there stood a library that was no ordinary place. It was known as the Whispering Library, a mysterious building where books didn't just sit silently on shelves, they spoke. Soft murmurs, faint whispers, and sometimes even clear voices could be heard echoing through its halls. The library was ancient, its stone walls covered in thick ivy, and its tall, arched windows seemed to watch the world with a knowing gaze. The townsfolk rarely visited, for the whispers unnerved them. But for those who were curious and brave, the library offered more than just stories. It offered wisdom, secrets, and sometimes a glimpse into the unknown. One gloomy afternoon, a young girl named Eliza decided to visit the library. Eliza was different from the other children in town. She was endlessly curious, always asking questions, and had an insatiable love for stories. Her grandmother, who had passed away a year ago, used to tell her tales of the Whispering Library. "It's a magical place," her grandmother would say, "where stories come alive and speak to those who listen." Eliza had always been intrigued, but it wasn't until that rainy day, when the sky was heavy with clouds and the air smelled of damp earth, that she finally gathered the courage to go. She pulled her coat tightly around her and stepped into the library, the heavy wooden door creaking as it swung open. The moment she entered, a gust of wind swept through the library, rustling the pages of countless books. The whispers grew louder, a symphony of voices that seemed to come from every corner of the room. Eliza's heart raced, but she took a deep breath and stepped further inside. The library was vast, with towering bookshelves that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, and the dim light filtering through the stained glass windows cast colorful patterns on the floor. Eliza walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silence, her eyes scanning the shelves. As she wandered through the aisles, she noticed something peculiar. Some of the books glowed faintly, their spines shimmering with a soft, golden light. She reached out to touch one, and as her fingers brushed against the spine, the whispers grew louder, forming coherent words. "Choose me," the book seemed to say. "I have a story to tell." Eliza hesitated for a moment, then pulled the book from the shelf. It was heavy, bound in dark leather, with intricate designs etched into the cover. She opened it, and as she did, the whispers grew into a clear, strong voice. The voice began to tell a tale of a hidden kingdom deep within an enchanted forest. This kingdom, known as Luminara, was a place where magic flowed like rivers and the very air sparkled with light. It was ruled by a wise and just queen named Eloria, who had the rare gift of seeing into the hearts of her people. She could sense their joys, their fears, and their deepest desires. Under her rule, the kingdom thrived, and its people lived in harmony. But one day, a dark shadow fell over Luminara. A powerful sorcerer, envious of the queen's abilities, cast a spell that trapped her in an endless slumber. Without their queen, the kingdom began to wither. The rivers dried up, the forests turned gray, and the people lost their hope. The voice then introduced a young girl named Lyra, who was not much older than Eliza. Lyra was an ordinary girl from a small village on the outskirts of the kingdom, but she had an extraordinary heart. When she learned of the queen's plight, she decided to embark on a perilous journey to save her. Lyra's quest was filled with challenges. She had to cross a treacherous forest where the trees seemed to move on their own, their branches reaching out like claws. She faced a river of fire, its flames leaping high into the sky, and a mountain that shifted and groaned as if it were alive. Each challenge tested her courage, her wit, and her determination. As Eliza listened, she felt as though she was living the story herself. She could feel the heat of the river, the cold wind on the mountain, and the fear and determination that Lyra felt. The voice was so vivid, so real, that Eliza couldn't tear herself away. But then, just as Lyra was about to reach the queen, the voice stopped. Eliza looked down at the book, but the pages were blank. The story was unfinished. What happened next? Eliza asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. The whispers returned, softer this time. To find out, you must continue the journey yourself. Eliza closed the book and stood up. She knew what she had to do. She had to find the rest of the story, to see it through to the end. But how? As she pondered this, she noticed a small, hidden door at the back of the library. It was barely visible, tucked away behind a bookshelf, and it seemed to beckon to her. Eliza approached the door and pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. With a deep breath, she descended the stairs, the whispers growing louder with each step. At the bottom, she found herself in a small, circular room. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on the pedestal was a single book, its cover glowing with the same golden light as the one she had found earlier. Eliza approached the book and opened it. The whispers grew into a chorus of voices, each telling a different part of the story. She realized that this was the source of all the stories in the library, the heart of the whispering library itself. As she read, Eliza learned that Lyra had indeed reached the queen, but at a great cost. The queen was trapped in a spell that could only be broken by a selfless act of sacrifice. Lyra, realizing what she had to do, gave up her own voice, her ability to speak, to save the queen and restore light to the kingdom. The story was beautiful and tragic, and it taught Eliza something important, that sometimes the greatest sacrifices lead to the greatest rewards. She closed the book and placed it back on the pedestal. The whispers faded, and the room was silent once more. Eliza made her way back up the stairs and out of the library, her mind filled with the lessons she had learned. She realized that stories were not just tales to be told, they were mirrors that reflected the human experience, teaching us about courage, sacrifice, and the power of selflessness. From that day on, Eliza visited the Whispering Library often, always eager to hear new stories and learn new lessons. And though the whispers never ceased, she no longer found them unsettling. Instead, they were a reminder of the endless possibilities that lay within the pages of a book.